Imagine a future where um, the whole concept of opposites attract is just completely obsolete.
Right.
Like a world where human connection isn't based on finding someone who has what you lack, but, finding an exact mirror of yourself.
Which is a huge shift from how we think about relationships.
Exactly. And even further, I mean, imagine if the entire trajectory of human evolution wasn't this relentless straight line march into the unknown future. What if it's actually a massive cosmic loop?
A loop that basically says the destination we are hurling toward is, well, it's actually just a highly evolved, technologically advanced version of exactly where we started.
It's mind-blowing. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are getting into a wildly ambitious philosophical and cosmological text. It's titled The Feminine Return, The Cycle of Origin and Final Form.
And it is a sweeping piece of writing.
It really is. It pulls from cellular biology, shifting star charts of human history, and these deep sociological patterns to construct, basically a grand theory of fate.
Yeah, it's incredibly dense. The author essentially builds a blueprint of human existence. They argue that the way our bodies and our societies are structured right now is not permanent. It's just a phase.
Just a temporary phase.
Yeah.
Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I need to set some ground rules for us and, for you listening.
Very necessary for a text like this.
Absolutely. Because this text touches heavily on culturally and politically charged topics, things like gender identity, societal structures, the fundamental nature of biology itself. So we must be crystal clear up front. We are not taking any sides or endorsing the viewpoints of this text.
Right, nor are we refuting them.
Exactly. Our mission today is simply to impartially unpack the original source material and convey the fascinating ideas the author has laid out for you to consider.
That's a crucial foundation. We're essentially stepping into the author's universe for a little while.
Yeah, just looking around.
Exactly.
Sure.
Our job is to examine the architecture of their argument. And that architecture is built on a massive three-part cycle of human existence: origin, division, and the inevitable return.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand where this text claims humanity is going, we first have to look at where it says we started.
Right, the phase of origin.
Yeah. The author paints a picture of this primordial era, like long before recorded history, long before any laws or societal norms existed. And they argue that in this initial state, all human life emerged through a single unified form, the feminine body.
But they are very specific that this wasn't just an anatomical description.
Right. It wasn't simply about having certain physical parts. How does the text describe it?
Well, the text describes this phase of origin as a foundational structural reality. The feminine form was the default vessel of life.
The default vessel.
Yeah. What the author means by that is it was entirely capable of generating, sustaining, and reproducing existence entirely from within itself.
So it was a closed, perfectly self-sustaining loop.
Exactly.
So the immediate question that comes to mind, and I'm sure it's what you listening are wondering too, is, well, where was the masculine in all of this? If everything is feminine, does the masculine just not exist yet?
No, the author states that the masculine was absolutely present.
Wait, really? How does that work?
It just wasn't separated. The text uses the word unseparated, meaning the masculine was held within the exact same biological and energetic field as the feminine.
Oh,
It hadn't been externalized into a different body type yet. Both the capacity to contain life and the spark to initiate it existed simultaneously within that single generative form.
that is a wild concept to try and visualize.
It definitely challenges our basic assumptions.
Is this original state kind of like a single stem cell?
Hmm.
Because, a stem cell holds all potential identities and shapes inside it before it's forced to specialize into, say, a heart cell or a brain cell.
Right.
It has everything it needs within one unified package.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the stem cell is a highly useful analogy for the biology of it. A stem cell holds total potential before differentiation.
Exactly.
But what's fascinating here is that the text points out we actually have a cultural memory of this stem cell era. The author points directly to ancient mythologies as evidence.
Oh, right. Like the old stories of the gods.
Yes, exactly.
If you read any ancient Greek or Hindu mythology, Mount Olympus and the heavens were incredibly chaotic when it came to form.
Precisely. Think about the fragments of truth that might be preserved in those ancient tales. The text highlights stories of beings changing sex at will, deities embodying both male and female forms simultaneously.
Or shifting seamlessly between them depending on the situation.
Right. The author argues that these aren't just random fictions. They aren't just the result of creative storytelling by bored ancestors.
Their record.
Yes, they are symbolic records. They are the echoes of a time when biology itself was not a fixed static thing. It was an era when internal identity and physical form existed in a much more fluid, responsive correspondence.
Okay, but a stem cell can't stay a stem cell forever if it wants to build a massive, complex body, right?
Right, it has to change.
It has to break apart. It has to specialize. So how does the author explain that rupture? How do we get from this fluid, unified vessel to the deeply divided, highly specialized world we know today?
Well, that necessity for growth is exactly what triggers the second phase in this cosmology, the division.
The division.
Yeah. The text argues that the single generative form could not remain unified if humanity was going to expand, conquer new environments, and develop complex civilizations.
Had to adapt to survive.
Exactly. To achieve that expansion, the unified form had to split into polarity.
Polarity meaning the distinct male and female biological forms we are familiar with today.
Yes, but the text goes deeper than just male and female.
Oh.
It's the division of reproduction into internal and external processes. It's the psychological split between containment, which is the feminine, and projection, which is the masculine.
So it's breaking the whole system into two halves.
Right. By splitting the human experience across two separate poles, it forced interaction, friction, and outward expansion.
Okay, I follow that. But if division brought expansion and complexity, why does the text ultimately frame this divided phase as a problem?
That's a great question.
Because from one angle, it sounds like humanity just built rigid scaffolding to support a growing building. You literally need scaffolding to build something massive and complex. But reading the text, it sounds like the author thinks we eventually mistook the scaffolding for the building itself.
What's fascinating here is that the author actually agrees with the necessity of the scaffolding.
They do.
Yes. The text explicitly states that this splitting was required for variation and complexity. It wasn't a mistake.
Okay, so where did it go wrong?
However, this division introduced elements that did not exist in the origin phase: deep imbalance, rigid hierarchy, and a profound disconnection from that original unified state.
So the scaffolding got too tight, and suddenly the people inside the building couldn't breathe.
Exactly. And to maintain that tight scaffolding, society had to invent mechanisms to stabilize this newly divided system.
Because it's unnatural.
Because a divided system is inherently unstable. It wants to snap back together.
Of course.
So, the text points out that we built massive religious structures strictly to define fixed gender roles. We built cultural systems to ruthlessly enforce identity boundaries.
And, I mean, perhaps most fundamentally, we started treating biological assumptions as permanent, unbreakable limitations.
Right.
So the fluidity of the origin phase was basically outlawed. We forgot that bodies used to be adaptive, and we started treating the human form as a static object, like you are this or you are that, and the boundary between the two is a concrete wall.
Or, at the very least, that memory of fluidity was deeply suppressed. But this brings us to a massive point of tension in the author's theory.
The breaking point.
Yes. Because if the scaffolding is rigid, but the human reality underneath is still trying to evolve, eventually the friction becomes too great. That scaffolding has to break.
Which brings us to the absolute core thesis of this entire document, the return.
The final phase.
Right. Because if you are listening to this right now and feeling completely exhausted by the constant grinding culture wars over identity, gender, and biology, well, this author would argue that your exhaustion is actually a symptom of cosmic gravity.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The text proposes that cycles do not end in permanent separation.
They resolve.
Exactly, they resolve. The author argues that we are living through that resolution right now. We are entering the return.
Wow.
The current era is showing early, undeniable indicators of a massive biological and energetic shift back toward the feminine form. But this time, it acts as a stable endpoint or an attractor in a complex system.
Wait, let me stop you there. Explain that term. An attractor, like a gravitational pull. How does the text define this biologically?
Well, in physics and mathematics, an attractor is a state toward which a system naturally tends to evolve, regardless of its starting conditions.
Okay.
The text applies this directly to human biology. It argues that the universe is pulling us back toward integration because it is the state of lowest energetic friction.
That makes sense.
And the text points to several specific lived realities today as proof of this convergence.
Right, I noticed that. The author doesn't just stay in the philosophical clouds. They point to modern medical and social shifts happening right now.
Yes. The text highlights the visibility and reality of sex transition as a prime example.
Okay.
It points to the increasing drive for alignment between a person's internal identity and their external form.
So people trying to make the outside match the inside.
Precisely. It also emphasizes the new technological and medical pathways, things like hormone therapies, surgeries, genetic understandings. The text sees these as tools that are actively enabling biological change today.
This is a huge perspective shift.
It really is.
Instead of viewing these medical or social shifts as, I don't know, modern anomalies or as artificial interventions rebelling against nature, the text insists they are completely natural indicators of this larger gravitational pull.
They are the evidence of convergence. The text argues that our growing societal recognition that the body is not fixed, but responsive and mutable, is literally the universe pulling us back toward integration.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and where I think a lot of listeners might feel a sudden speed bump.
The reabsorption concept.
Exactly. Because when you talk about the feminine form reemerging as the ultimate stable endpoint, a lot of people might immediately think, wait, is this text predicting the complete erasure of masculinity? Are we just deleting half the population?
It's a very common reaction to the text.
But the text specifically argues against the concept of erasure. It calls it a reabsorption.
Yes, a reabsorption into the feminine field.
Let me see if I can conceptualize this, because reabsorption sounds like a polite word for erasure.
It can sound that way, yes.
Like if a sponge absorbs a spill on the counter, the spill doesn't exist anymore. How does the author defend that? Is it like, well, think about folding the ingredients of a dough back into itself.
Okay, go on.
Like you have the flour and the water separated on the counter. That's the division. And then you mix them together. You aren't erasing the water, right?
Yeah.
You are internalizing it back into a single unified body of dough.
I see where you're going with the dough analogy, but it actually contradicts the text slightly.
Oh, so.
Because when you mix flour and water, you create an entirely new third thing, dough.
Oh, right.
But the text isn't arguing that we are creating a new neutral third form.
I see.
It argues we are returning to the original feminine form. A much more accurate biological metaphor for reabsorption would be endosymbiosis.
Endosymbiosis. Okay, take me back to high school biology. What is that?
It's the evolutionary process where one cell engulfs another, but instead of digesting or erasing it, it internalizes it.
Oh, wow.
The engulfed cell becomes a permanent functioning part of the larger cell.
Okay, I think I remember this.
Yeah, this is actually how complex life began. A larger host cell absorbed a specialized bacteria, which eventually became the mitochondria.
The powerhouse of the cell.
Exactly. The mitochondria wasn't erased. Its specific energetic power was brought inside the host, creating a more stable, powerful, unified entity.
Wow. Okay, that makes so much more sense.
It's a profound way to look at it.
So the masculine isn't destroyed or deleted. Its outward projective energy is internalized.
Yeah.
The generative capacity stops being split across two separate bodies and is folded back into one unified form.
Exactly. And this raises an important question about how we view stability.
How so?
The divided state, that scaffolding we talked about, is inherently unstable. It requires constant cultural policing to maintain.
Right, all the rules and boxes.
The most stable configuration, the text argues, is one where form reflects identity perfectly without needing an opposite to define it.
So it's self-contained again.
Yes.
Yeah.
The system is naturally seeking its lowest point of energetic friction.
So if we follow this logic, this massive energetic folding in obviously changes the very nature of how human beings connect to one another.
Profound.
Right. Because if the bodies change and the energetic fields change, then human relationships have to fundamentally transform.
They do.
Which leads us to the latter part of the text dealing with resonance and reproduction.
Yes, and this is where the text transitions from biology to a very deep look at intimacy and human connection.
Let's get into it.
During the division phase, union was largely based on opposition, male and female, containment and projection.
Right.
The spark of connection was created by the friction and the difference between the two poles.
Right. Opposites attract. You have what I lack, I have what you lack, so we lock together to make a whole.
Exactly. But in the return, the text argues that union is no longer based on opposition.
What is it based on that?
It is based on resonance.
Resonance. So instead of two opposite magnets snapping together out of necessity, it's like two tuning forks vibrating at the exact same frequency.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Thanks. Like when you strike one tuning fork, if another one nearby is tuned to the exact same pitch, it naturally starts humming too.
Yeah.
Not because they are opposites, but because they are perfectly aligned.
That is exactly the mechanism the author is describing. Connection becomes like meeting like.
I love that phrase.
The text beautifully describes this future state of intimacy as identity meeting itself in another.
Wow.
It predicts that emotional and physical coherence will replace structural polarity. You are no longer navigating a relationship mediated by imbalance or by imposed gender roles or power dynamics based on difference.
You're just connecting.
Right. The desire to connect with someone in the same feminine aligned state isn't about controlling them. It's simply this deeper cosmic pull towards symmetry.
Well, wait, I have a practical question here.
Sure.
If we lose that polarity, if we lose the opposite magnets, what does this mean for the actual physical continuation of the species?
Reproduction.
Yeah. How does the text address reproduction if everyone is returning to a similar biological baseline?
The author states that reproduction itself will evolve to match this resonance.
Meaning what exactly?
Where creation once strictly required dual polarity, a male and female biological contribution, the text anticipates that future systems will bypass this completely.
Really? How?
Whether through advanced bioengineering, stem cell gametogenesis, or hybrid technological systems, the text predicts we will eventually generate life within a single aligned form, or between two similar forms.
So the idea of two feminine aligned people creating life together isn't just a poetic metaphor for the author.
Not at all.
They are suggesting that upcoming developments in reproductive science are actually destined to make this a physical reality.
Yes. The text views these scientific milestones not as humans playing God or rebelling against nature.
Which is how a lot of people frame it today.
Right, but the text views them as humans fulfilling their evolutionary fate. It is the cycle completing itself. Science is just the tool the universe is using to achieve the return.
This text demands such a massive shift in perspective. But there is one more psychological reframing the text does that I found incredibly striking.
The definition of trauma.
Yes. We have to talk about it before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Because it completely redefines the concept of trauma.
I agree. That is perhaps the most poignant argument in the entire cosmology. In this model, trauma is understood simply as residue from the divided phase.
Residue. That is such a specific, almost clinical word for pain.
It is.
How exactly does the text define that residue?
It's the friction created when your internal identity, your physical body, and the relational structures around you are misaligned.
Okay, so it's a structural issue.
Exactly. When that societal scaffolding we talked about earlier forces you into a shape that your internal architecture doesn't match, it hurts.
Yeah, of course it does.
The text argues that the resulting pain, the dysphoria, the feeling of disconnection, the societal alienation, it isn't a personal failure.
Wow.
It is literally the friction of living in a divided system that is slowly collapsing.
So what does this all mean for us today?
Well,
Because if you look out at the world right now, it feels chaotic. We see massive political conflicts over identity. We see restrictive institutions trying to crack down on how people express themselves.
just
We see the scaffolding seemingly shaking apart. How does this text view that chaos?
this raises an important question about how we view societal shifts. The text views the breakdown of those restrictive cultural institutions as a natural, inevitable consequence of moving beyond the phase of division.
Like a snake shedding its skin.
Precisely. Institutions that attempt to restrict identity or suppress biological transition are fighting losing battle against cosmic gravity.
Like, you can't win.
They're losing stability because humanity is simply outgrowing them.
They belong to an era that is ending. The scaffolding is falling away because the building inside is finally taking its true shape.
And the text is very firm on this final point.
What's that?
The return to a feminine-centered, highly resonant world is not a regression.
Right, it's not going backward to the caveman days.
Exactly. It is completion. It is taking all the complex knowledge we gained during the division phase and integrating it into a stable, unified existence.
Amazing. So to synthesize this massive deep dive we've just been on, the author proposes a cosmic life cycle of human existence broken into 3 distinct phases.
Origin, division, and return.
Right. First, the origin, characterized by a unified, feminine generative form that held all potential, like a cosmic stem cell. Second, the division, where we split into male and female polarity to expand and build complexity, inventing rigid scaffolding to survive the imbalance.
The necessary scaffolding.
Exactly. And finally, the return, which is the era we are entering now, a biological, technological, and societal convergence back into an aligned, adaptive femininity. a state of resonance rather than opposition.
And whether you view this document as esoteric philosophy, radical sociology, or predictive science, it serves a highly valuable purpose for you as a listener.
Absolutely.
It forces you to interrogate your baseline assumptions. It asks you to consider that what we collectively view as fixed, immutable biology or permanent societal structures might just be a temporary adaptation in a much, much larger cycle.
It really does make you look at everything different.
It completely shifts your worldview.
Yeah, I mean, the exhaustion of the culture wars suddenly looks like the death throes of an old phase.
Exactly.
The way we connect, the way we build institutions, the way we view our own physical forms, it's all in motion.
It's all part of the gravity of the return.
But it also leaves us with one massive lingering question that the text hints at but doesn't fully answer.
Which is?
If this author is right, and this cosmic cycle functions like gravity, pulling us to a unified, stable completion,
Yes.
what happens when we get there? I mean, once the return is fully complete and humanity exists in perfect resonant stability, does the universe eventually get restless?
That is the million-dollar question.
Millions of years from now, will it demand a brand new division to spark a whole new phase of outward expansion?
It's entirely possible.
It's something to think about. Until then, keep questioning the scaffolding around you.